Hi, my name is Chris, and I'm the host of the Birding Life Youth podcast, the show where we talk to young birders to find out what makes them tick. On this podcast, I have the immense privilege of interviewing Adam Buckham. So without further ado, please help me welcome Adam. Okay, I want to welcome Adam to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am a 15-year-old boy living in Cape Town. I go to Bishop's Diocesan College in Rondebosch, and I'm a very passionate birder and bird photographer.
Okay, cool. And how long have you been birding?
I've been birding for roughly 8 years since I've been really started. 8 or 9 years.
And what piqued your interest in birding?
It was mainly my dad. So he started birding from a young age before I was born. And then my older brother, started birding at a similar age to what I started. And it was just my dad going out, and I one day asked him if I could go along, and I guess that's where it all started. And I've just been really passionate about it ever since. And so it was mainly my dad, and his interest sparked my interest. It was due to him.
For those who don't know, your dad is Michael Buckham.
Yes, he is, yeah.
Cool. So he's one of South Africa's top birders. What is it like to have such a brilliant birder to guide you in your birding journey?
Yeah, it's awesome actually. It's really nice going out into the field with him. Obviously, he's very experienced. He's been birding for most of his life. He's gotten to know pretty much all the local birds like the back of his hand. He knows the calls. He's learned the calls very well. So it's nice when we're birding. We don't necessarily have to stop and look for the birds if we don't want to see them. We can hear them in their ticket off our list for atlasing. And he's very experienced, and it's very nice to bird with him because you get to see everything in the area, and he knows not just the local Western Cape birds or even Cape Town. He knows most of the country, and it's great to be able to find all the birds of the area and all the locals and endemics.
And so your father hosted the Better Birding webinars. What are some of the things that you've actually learned from these webinars?
So for each bird, they would sort of give a few key identification points. And the main thing I learned, I guess, was just these key identification points and what to look for out in the field and what to expect when faced with an ID challenge. They were very detailed. For example, the pelagic webinars, they were split into 3 groups for all the pelagic birds of Southern Africa. And they really went into great detail about how to identify these pelagic birds and how to separate them from similar confusing species. And I think it's really helped me with just what to look for and what to expect when out in the field and when actually faced with these challenges, with these bird identifications in the field, which has really helped. And I think I'll never forget it. And it's been really nice.
So you told me previously that you love waders. I tend to stay away from them because I can't seem to differentiate between a marsh sandpiper and a common green shank. How do you tell the difference between these two birds and other waders?
Yeah, so I think just for the common green shank and marsh sandpiper, it's quite difficult at first glance, but I think once you get to look at the bird closer or even just get to know the birds better, like the general species, I think behavior also comes into play when identifying these waders. But generally, common green shanks is a bigger bird. It has a thicker bill and I think a longer bill. And marsh sandpiper has generally got like a little thin needle-like bill, which I think it uses for feeding. But green shank's also just generally a bigger bird. It's like a bit more like on stilts with its legs. I think the legs are taller than marsh sandpiper, and I always get the impression that it's more silvery. It's got a much more grey and silver plumage, whereas the marsh sandpiper has a more dark brown plumage to its wings and back. But other waders, I have got to know them very well. We bird on the St. Francis Sandbank pretty much every December holiday when we're there, and I've really got to know the birds, the wader behavior, and pretty much all the different wader species, their behaviors, and their key identification features and their plumages. And yeah, I really enjoy photographing waders. I feel that you can always creep up to them and they let you get quite close sometimes, and they get quite relaxed when you're around them. So I've had some really nice close encounters with a lot of different species of waders where I can really study them a bit better and get to know what their behaviors are and what they look like. And that helps me identify them, I guess.
Again, you say it's your favorite. So what is the what is one of your favorite memories of a wader? Like, what are some of the most awesome sightings that you've actually had?
So one of the best wader sightings I think I've had is actually recently this last December holiday. We were in St. Francis on the sandbank, and it was this in the afternoon. The evening light had started coming through, so it was really nice. There were a lot of birds on the sandbank. There was a big tern roost. We had scanned through that, saw some roseate terns and all of those terns. And then we were scanning the waders, and we found two red dots, which they're not they're not rare birds, but I'm always excited to see them. I don't see them often at all, and they are a bit more scarce than they used to be. I think in the country, pretty much. So I don't see them often. I see them at West Coast sometimes, but that's on very rare occasions. So it was really nice to see them, and we got closer, and they're birds we haven't photographed at all. So we started creeping up, and the closer we got, the more they got used to us, and they were sort of just feeding while we were 10 meters away, and I find it really awesome to get nice and low to the birds and get some nice pictures. And yeah, it's amazing what you can see when you're close, and like all these different features that you can use in the future to identify these birds. Like they have spots on the flanks which you don't really notice at a distance, and just their general behavior. They're much more like much bigger and plumpy birds, and they sort of hobble around the ground, and it's quite nice watching them and just studying their behavior and their feeding habits and all of that. Yeah, but yeah, it was really nice just to. It wasn't necessarily a rare bird, but it was just really nice to sit down on the sand and get low to these birds and watch them move towards us actually as they got closer and closer in this nice light, and just photographing them while they just were within 10 meters of us. It was really, really nice.
And then I think like one of the questions that I usually like asking photographers is, what is one of your favorite captures?
Yeah, it's tough to say, but um, I really enjoy taking pictures of swifts and swallows, especially swift. I find they got well, not very, but a lot more of a predictable flight than swallows. So they're easy to see what their movements are going to be like. And yeah, I really enjoy. I've got some really nice pictures of African black swift and white-armed swift, and it's nice to get a background beside the sky. I find it really challenging to get any background beside the sky with swift and swallow photography. It's really difficult tracking them. But yeah, I've got a really nice picture of a white-armed swift, which I really really like. I think it's actually feeding on water. Um, and yeah, it's just one of those lucky moments where it flew past me and it was right there, and I sort of just pointed my camera and it luckily focused, and it got it at the perfect time as its mouth was open, and yeah, it was a very nice picture. But otherwise, like I remember early in my birding days, like 4 or 5 years ago, we were at Rondaflay just walking around, and a common waxbill, which is a very common bird, but it flew towards me and landed on a bush right next to me, and it was just like perfect light. And I always thought everything about the picture was like perfect. The background was nice and clean. The light was perfect. There was just a simple little stick that I was sitting on. The bird was in perfect position. And yeah, those I guess are the photos that I really, really enjoy taking. I always think it would be really nice to get a perfect picture of every single bird. And yeah, because photography is just such a big part of my birding. Yeah, I just really like taking the perfect picture, I guess.
You've mentioned that you like waders and you like swifts, two of the worst birds for me to identify. Do you actually like any of the easy birds?
Yeah, I guess like all the colorful birds, like how can you not enjoy them? Like bee eaters and kingfishers and all of that. There's no doubt that I really enjoy those. It's a lot more rewarding, I find, to identify birds such as swift and waders than kingfishers, because you generally get a good sense of kingfishers by looking at a book, just a quick page of them, because they're very colourful. They got all these different colours, and yeah, you can identify them quite quickly. But swifts and waders, for instance, they're a lot more challenging, and I think there's a lot more reward to get from identifying the bird. But like yeah, also I've just photographed a lot of waders and swifts in my like since I've had my camera, and they're just birds that I really enjoy photographing. I find you can always get better pictures of them. There's never the best picture. But yeah, I really do like kingfishers and bee eaters, for example. We don't see them very often, bee eaters especially, living in Cape Town, but we do see a fair share of kingfishers. And yeah, it's always nice seeing colourful birds like those.
That's great. At least in that way, you still like the common birds that I can identify.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
Are you involved in any eco projects besides birding?
So as I mentioned before, I go to Bishops, and there's a whole society system where you can join societies, and I am in Gin Society. It's called Gin, not the drink, but it's Global Issues Network. So it's basically just there are many different like projects that you go on, but it's mostly based around keeping the earth clean, I guess, and stopping pollution and waste and all of that. So there are all these little different projects that the boys take on, and all these ideas that they do to keep the earth clean. And I think it's a great initiative, and I've really enjoyed joining it, being part of it for the last 2 years.
What makes Gin so different from other eco projects? I know you mentioned that it's mostly at your school, but what what is the thing that defines it from other brands such as WWF and uh, all these other different organizations?
Yeah, so it's obviously a very small little, because it's within our school, it's a very small little organization, I guess. But I think what makes it unique is that it's driven by the boys mostly, and I think the ideas that the boys come up with are a lot more unique and very different to some other ideas that are currently being used in today's world, which I think is a very good thing. Like it's good to have some difference and variety, and I think some of these ideas can actually be better than most current ideas. And yeah, I think that's one of the main things that separates Gin from all other organizations. That the ideas that are developed then into projects are very different in the sense that they are that the boys themselves came up with them. And I think it's different minds working together to form this project. And I think it's really brilliant, and it really makes it a unique organization.
One thing I discussed with you a bit earlier is how we've got all these great kind of ideas as young people. None of us, I believe that the world is perfect as it is. We all want to make a change. What is one thing you would say that young people can do to actually make a difference in this world?
I think one of the main things is using social media. It's obviously a very big part of literally everyone's life, and it has a massive sphere of influence. So you can post one thing, and hundreds or even thousands of people can see it. So you can influence a lot of people, and I think by posting on social media about this conservation idea and all these little projects within, that I think you can really speak to a lot of people that might be less educated on this matter than you might be. But yeah, I think using social media would really help, especially because there's such a large sphere of influence, and it can just speak to so many people. And yeah, I think you can use this to really get the idea across. And I think that's the best way to get the idea across to younger people.
Finally, before we end off, do you have a bogey bird?
I don't. I don't have a massive one, but I guess the biggest one in terms of rarities is lesser blackback gull. My dad also, funny enough, doesn't have it on his Southern African list, which surprised me because he's been birding for a long time, and there have been quite a few of them reported over the many years that he's been birding. But yeah, we've just never. We always think that would we be able to find one in the field in a flock of culp gulls, and yeah, I guess we'll have to find out. But yeah, they're quite tricky to identify, and yeah, it's quite tough to find them in the field. Yeah, another bogey bird I had, which I don't have anymore, is Hottentot bucking quail, or now known as fenbush bucking quail. But yeah, I've seen that quite recently. But it's a really cool bird. It's an endemic to Southern Africa, so it's quite a special bird to see. And yeah, it's always so close to home. Like you get them all over the mountain and all over the different mountain ranges around Cape Town. I just never really managed to go and flush one. So we did a little flush in the Karoo, in one of the Karoo mountain ranges, and we managed to find one there, which was really nice. It's a bird I've always wanted to see. They're obviously very hard to get good views of, but yeah, it was very nice to see one finally.
Oh, that's great. Well done on getting your birds that don't exist.
Thank you. Yeah.
Just finally, what are some of the dream destinations of birding that you have?
Yeah, there's just so many. Like around the world, there's so many different countries I'd like to go visit because I'd really like to explore the different birds of the world and not only be restricted to Southern Africa and its boundaries. But yeah, I think one of the main countries I'd like to go to is Colombia, which is obviously it's the South American, all the South American birds, so like hummingbirds and all the trogons and all the jacamars and all of those kind of birds, all the forest birds. But yeah, it is the country with the highest species count, and I think it's quite recently been. You can easily travel there quite recently. But yeah, I would really like to go there, and I think the variety of birds and the different colors that you can see there, the birds there look really nice. They're very colorful, and yeah, I think that country definitely has my attention. So hopefully, I can visit that in the near future.
That's great. So, well, I just want to thank you for being here on the podcast.
Oh, thank you very much. It's been my pleasure.
Once again, I just want to thank Adam for being such an awesome guest. Be sure to listen to the interview that we had with Adam's father on your preferred podcast player. Until next time, happy birding.